Friends, would you pray with me? O Holy One, O true vine, O gnarly trunk, O wild shade, O apple tree, Jesus, tree of life, speak. Amen. Before Harry Potter, there was C.S. Lewis's Narnia. And there was a tree planted by the waters along the riverbanks of the great river in Lantern Waste, a tree that would grow tall and strong to protect Narnia. Its spreading branches seemed to cast a light rather than a shade, and silver apples peeped out like stars from under every leaf. But it was the smell which came from it, even more than the sight, that had made everyone draw in their breath. For a moment, one could hardly think about anything else. Friends, this sweet-smelling tree was known as the tree of protection, and sanctuary it did provide for Narnia for some 900 years. And then life crashed in, the unexpected, the unthinkable, the tragic. And the tree that had so long provided sanctuary and so many had depended on was felled. No one knows exactly how, but it came down. And as it fell, the evil Jadis rose and took over Narnia from Aslan. But look, a discarded silver apple core. And from one of the famous apples from that tree of protection, something that looked lifeless, looked like pre-compost, perhaps like a grain of wheat that falls into the ground and dies. Composted resurrection, new life springs forth. For from that very core, which somehow made its way to London, England in the ground, a descendant offspring grew up and sprouted, and not quite as magical a tree, but the sap flowed with the memory of Narnia. And for a second time, however, after this tree had grown, it too fell. A second surge, another pandemic. This time, no apple cores were left. And what seemed like a lifeless log ready to decompose became a glint in the eye of Diggory, who went to that fallen tree with a sliver of hope and repurposed it into a wardrobe. And from that very wooden wardrobe, of course, that gateway to a new place, a portal to possibility, Lucy and her siblings traveled to Narnia. Blessed are those who trust in God, whose trust is in the Holy One. They shall be like a tree planted by water, sending out its roots by the stream. It shall not fear when heat comes, and its leaves shall stay green in the year of drought. It is not anxious, and it does not cease to bear fruit. Blessed are you who trust in God. Blessed are you who see possibility beyond that which seems dormant and dead. Blessed are you who do not fear even when the heat comes. Blessed are you beyond anxiety in the times of drought, for you will be a tree of protection planted by the great river for others. You shall not be moved. You will not cease to bear fruit. For beloved fruit people born out of trust, what does trust in God look like? What does it feel like? Church, what do you look up to? What do you trust? What serves as your guide in these increasingly challenging days? With pandemic surges in India, South America, Michigan, as states continue to suppress the vote, as legislative bodies continue to attack the very identities and rights of beloved transgender youth, as Black bodies continue to be cut down by white police. Don't we all want to look up to something and crave wisdom and guidance and direction? Who, friends, stands in that gap for us as a face of God for whom we can put our trust? Have you ever strained your neck to look up at a sequoia, a redwood, or perhaps closer to home, an eastern white pine tree? Have you looked up to the tops of those sentient sentinels that are lost to sight, captured only by our imaginations, that canopy of biodiversity. We know the ancient Celts looked up. Remember that story of their tree of life that once stood 26 miles tall, rooted in the geographic and spiritual center of Ireland and Usanek. Lore has it that that ancient ash tree once grew 26 miles tall, and the tips of its branches touched every star in the sky. The Celts knew that sacred ash tree. The Druids spoke about its magical power, its Aslan-like protection spreading into their own communities, wisdom, guidance, and resurrection. The Celts did look up for that wisdom, but we know they also looked down. For they, like so many indigenous, closer to the earth cultures, found sacred clarity right at hand. God's image in the branch, the trunk, the twig. The divine presence in that which is right before their daily eyes, their daily work, their daily play. And in part of that inspired work come the mystical interweavings which emerge into what we know as the tree of life in our own sacred ancestry, Jesus. I am the vine, you are the branches. Abide in me, says Tree Jesus. Look up to me, trust in me, convene with me, look down for me, for I am here and now. Stay with me. When life crashes in, when the unexpected and hard comes your way, for it will, I will lead you through anxieties and fears and let your roots grow deep as your fruit ripens well. How will you know you are in my shade? Look for the fruit of the Spirit, and there I will be in love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-care. If you abide with such things and others who embody such qualities, you will be abiding with me. And when the unexpected comes and we meet hard diagnoses, injustices abound, and the loss of loved ones, I will be with you, says our beloved. The rooted vine of Christ will send up to our branched selves the water and nutrients we need to endure and overcome. In this year of pandemics, restricted from most travel, many of us have become even more grateful for the very gift of things growing near the places where we live. On Earth Day this year, our Eco-Stewards community invited people to take a pilgrimage in place and to walk with new eyes of intention just around the places that we call sacred and home, and look for signs of spirit presence, even in what is dying, even in what is blooming. Notice. We then shared and reflected on how sacred local trees have become, taken on a new holiness during this past year. For there is indeed, friends, healing in those leaves. But a healing that doesn't come all at once. Not one, but 2 shots are needed for its vaccine to take hold. Healing that comes in stages. And finally, from Mark's gospel, we hear of this story that has long captivated me. One that takes place just after Jesus and his friends serve up some food justice to some 5,000 people on a hillside that perhaps knew food desert apartheid. Following this feeding, Jesus encounters someone who begs for his vision to be restored. Earthy Jesus spits into his hands and lays them on the eyes of this person and asks, "Can you see anything?" The person looks up and says, "I can see people, but they look like trees walking." And Jesus then lays his hands on the eyes again, and sight is restored, clarity received. In this story, we know well, transformation does not happen all at once. It takes some time, and clarity only comes after 2 separate encounters with the divine. We who have journeyed long in this past year, we are living in an in-between. We're not yet restored. Wholeness has not yet taken root. While our planet got a chance to breathe last year with that activity, lockdown of human interruption, there's still so much that hangs in the balance. And so, friends, the question for us remains, how do we intend to live in this liminal in-between? How might we journey together as trees walking, while lacking certainty, while vision remains blurred, while we don't have all the answers? How might we press on nonetheless? We don't have what we yet crave for, total transformation. We do not yet have justice that so many deserves, but we do have roots, and we are the branches. We are, friends, trees walking. Nottoway tribal leader, Alliance of Native Seed Keepers founder, friend, and eco-steward Beth Roach calls us to our roots, saying, we must hold our ancestors' wisdom while we envision and adapt to the future that will come. And James Baldwin reminds us of those branches. How are we intimately connected to each other? He says, if I love you, I have to make you conscious of the things that you don't see. So together, tree-like friends who don't yet see it all, may we summon the courage to love fiercely across the differences, and may vision soon come. Yesterday, as we celebrated Arbor Day, here on the very steps of this sanctuary, on our behalf, our climate jubileers, we're handing out trees to people walking. 40-some tree seedlings, thanks to Boston Speak for the Trees, were given out. Mark Houston yelling out, free trees, more oxygen, less CO2, happy Arbor Day, help the earth and others breathe. Friends, this powerful witness of a church still emerging from our seclusion was real, and it meant something for the many walking up and down Newbury and Berkeley Street yesterday. We were able to witness in a prayerful and humble way to a wider community that knits us together. A beautiful moment of visibility for us as a church. Trees, not only walking, but talking. We'll hear later in today's time together as our jubileers continue our adult ed together about how trees under the roots are so much more majestic than we have ever imagined. The secret of trees, the secret life of trees, all the fungal roots that connect these trees to one another, that defend themselves from harm, that nurture one another. Friends, there is much below the surface that we don't get. So thanks be to God, today Hannah Miller Waters is helping us all go beneath the surface of those beloved waters, those sacred waters that will be troubled, and then she will emerge. And she will pass through that wardrobe-like Narnia gateway, that portal, into a new space, a new mystical, majestic reality where all are beloved, where all reflect God's image, where every twig and pebble, feline and turtle look like God, where hurting and tears are no more, where justice is upheld, equality achieved, reparations known, forgiveness found, and finally, then, reconciliation realized. Hannah, we're going to go with you in that font of every blessing. We long for that wardrobe that takes us to a new place, a new reality, where our roots will where our roots will be sent out to seek that water as trees planted by sacred water. May we go together knowing we need one another, and may the blessings of all that is life be with us as we all celebrate this sacrament together.